Roundtable, and there are many organizations that are part of it. I will name some of them: Federation of Indian American Christians of North America, Hindus for Human Rights, Center for Pluralism, American Muslim Institution, 21 Wilberforce, International Christian Concern. There are Association of Indian Muslims of America. There are a whole lot of other organizations. We'll hear from most people. That a Jubilee Campaign, New York State Council of Churches. We are going to be joined very soon by the Ambassador at Large, the US Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, Mr. Rashad Hussain, and we welcome former USCIRF Chair. Last month we would have said USCIRF Chair, but there is a difference of month now. Nadine Maenza, she has been terrific. She's done the 4 years actually that she was with the USCIRF. She's got a lot of flack also, a lot of criticism also for the work that she's done on India, but remarkable work, wonderful work. So thank you so much. We also have Dr. Gregory Stanton here. He's a veteran of the US Department of State. He's also the founder, president of Genocide Watch, one of the best known scholars on genocide studies across the world. He has got a tremendous background. He's all the way back in 1989, he had predicted the genocide, the very unfortunate genocide in Rwanda, which did happen 5 years later. And of course, along with Ms. Maenza, he's also a celebrity in India now for his work. So,
a prophet is without honor in his own country.
So I would like to start we'll just wait for some time for Ambassador Hussain to come in. I would like to start by inviting Reverend Peter Cook to come and make his remarks at the beginning. Why don't you come and join us? And but before that, actually, let's just play a video. We have taped remarks from US Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts. So if you can come in and play those remarks, and then we will have you over, Reverend Cook, and then you please talk. Reverend Cook was deported from India. So he's a direct victim of persecution at the hands of the Indian government. Let's just watch US Senator Ed Markey.
I'm Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts. It's an honor to once again address this year's International Religious Freedom Summit in Washington, D.C. We cannot forget about those around the world who face violence and persecution solely because of their religious beliefs. I would like to thank the Indian American Muslim Council for giving me the opportunity to share a few words on this crucial topic. As the largest democracy in the world, it is incumbent on the Indian government to uphold the principles of pluralism and secularism, which are embedded in the Indian Constitution. In recent years, we have seen a continuing pattern of discrimination against religious minorities and narrowing of the space for the practice of different religious beliefs. This includes the demolition of homes in predominantly Muslim cities, vandalism of mosques and churches, and the implementation of laws that specifically discriminate against religious minorities. The United States and India have a long-standing partnership based on shared values and shared respect. That is why the United States must encourage the Indian government to fulfill its commitment to its own citizens, the right of all individuals to practice and propagate religious enshrined in India's Constitution. In the United States Senate, I will continue to speak up and support.
So much. Please welcome the US Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, Rashad Hussain. Let's give him a big hand. I hope you have some time for us today. Okay, thank you so much. I was hoping, Peter, if we can kick off with you, as I said, Reverend Peter Cook is he's the executive director of New York State Council of Churches. We will have most of our speakers limit ourselves to 2 to 3 minutes because we would like to hear from the investor. So why don't you come and then we will go across to the investor. Please.
My name is Peter Cook. I'm the executive director of the New York State Council of Churches. I come to this conversation having had a fairly direct experience of exclusion and oppression in India when I led a group of 12 of us to India in 2018 to visit people of different faiths. It was a fairly touristy kind of event, but unfortunately 9 of us were turned away at the Chennai airport and sent home. And unfortunately, this is a very frequent occurrence in Indian airports, but I don't know that people always realize that. And so I want to continue to give voice to this kind of oppressive practice on the part of the Indian government. I also want to make clear why that occurred from the Indian government's perspective and why this is just so disturbing. You must understand the Indian government has a lot invested in maintaining the caste system and keeping people in their place. And so anybody who might threaten that caste system in some way, either through words or actions, is very intimidating to them. I'm particularly worried about Christians who might bring money into the country to encourage Christian institutions that offer education or health care that might lift up, for instance, Dalits in India. They're also worried in some way about the inclusive message of Christianity, which sees the image of God in all people and preaches a very radical inclusivity, which goes right up against the Hindu nationalist project. They're worried that Christians might in some way side with those who are oppressed in that country, particularly people whose labor is exploited by elites in that country and are really relegated to a subordinate role where they become sort of unwitting philanthropists for the very wealthy in India. So you showing up as a Christian in so many ways is just threatening to them. And this is why they try to push it away. We have just decided that we are going to speak as loudly as we can about this experience. We are not going to be intimidated. I feel I'm in a position, because I'm not an Indian national, to be able to do that and speak strongly and forcefully against all of these caste-ridden oppressive policies that make up the Hindu nationalist project. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Reverend Peter Cook of the New York State Council of Churches. I would like to invite Miss Nadine Maenza, former chair of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. She is, as most of you know, she left this office just last month. I just heard there's some great news also coming out from her, but that's later in the day today, and that's her news, so I'm not going to, share that now. She has, the important thing is that while she was the chair of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, we saw the USCIRF in the most important development in a long time, designate India, or rather recommend that the US Department of State designate India as a country of particular concern. Without much ado, Ms. Maenza.
We're doing it from here, right?
No, please come on.
Okay. Sure.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, please give her a big hand.
Thank you so much for coming. As he mentioned, I finished as the chair of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, and I'm really happy to be sharing today that I've just started and taken over as president of the or secretary, joining Greg Mitchell. So be continuing in this space. I'm really excited to be a part of this event and all of the important conversations that are happening today and tomorrow here at the International Religious Freedom Summit. And I, of course, want to thank the Indian American Muslim Council for inviting me to speak and all the sponsors of this important event. So I wanted to talk about really the grave threats that are faced by India's religious minorities. And I use the term minorities, but let me make clear that these are massive groups of people. There are over 200 million Muslims living in India today. To give you some perspective, Indian Muslims were their own nation. It would be the 5th most populated country in the world. There are 27.8 million Christians in India. Both groups are facing relentless discrimination, structural violence, and even the threat of erasure by Prime Minister Modi and the ruling BJP party. 2 months ago, in April of 2022, USCIRF recommended that for the 3rd straight year that India be designated as a country of particular concern, or CPC. The International Religious Freedom Act of 1998 it defines a CPC as a country that has engaged in or tolerated systematic, ongoing, and egregious violations of religious freedom. That USCIRF report that we rolled out just days before I left the commission called on the Biden administration to openly condemn these violations, to support human rights organizations and activists in India who are raising awareness of these issues, and to impose targeted sanctions on individuals and entities responsible for severe violations of religious freedom by freezing those individuals or entities' assets and barring their entry to the United States. USCIRF made clear that these recommendations are urgent due to the manner in which President Modi and the BJP and affiliated Hindu extremist groups have advocated, instituted, and enforced sectarian policies seeking to establish India as an overtly Hindu state at grave danger to India's religious minorities. This includes the consistent incitement of violence against Muslims and Christians through disinformation and propaganda, the use of internet shutdowns to quash dissent in Muslim majority region of Kashmir, the criminalization of marriages between Hindu women and men of other faiths, and the repression of critical voices, especially religious minorities and those reporting on and advocating for them, through harassment, investigation, detention, and prosecution under laws such as the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, or the UAPA, and the sedition law. In the midst of these repressive government policies, Hindu supremacist groups, both openly and discreetly, encouraged by the state, enjoyed near complete impunity, despite assaulting Muslims and attacking Muslim prayer spaces, shops, and homes. The year ended with horrifying calls for genocide from India's 200 million Muslims, with a Hindu cleric saying openly, quote, "If you want to eliminate their population, then kill them. Be ready to kill and be ready to go to jail. Even if 100 of us are ready to kill 20 lakhs of them, then we will be victorious." These are chilling statements. This Hindu extremist leader, along with several others who also called Hindus to arm themselves and wage war against Muslims, has yet to be arrested. It is disappointing to see that the situation has sharply worsened in just 2 months since the report was released. While this year's report pertains to 2021, the first 6 months of 2022 showed a troubling decline in an already bad situation. In the beginning of the year, Hindu extremists called to ban the hijab, a headscarf worn by Muslim women, in schools in the state of Karnataka. Hindu students, both male and female, marched in protest against their own classmates' right to dress according to their religious beliefs. Young Muslim women were harassed not only by teachers and classmates, but also by dangerous Hindu extremist groups and BJP leaders. One particularly horrifying incident involved the Karnataka BJP doxing a number of minor Muslim girls through their official Twitter handles. These events culminated in the state high court ordering in March the hijab be banned in schools, a verdict that completely goes against the principles of secular democracy. April should have been a month of celebration, as it coincides with both the month of Ramadan as well as 2 Hindu festivals. Instead, Hindu extremist mobs marched in violent processions from Muslim-majority areas armed with swords, sticks, and rocks, chanting anti-Muslim slogans, arsoning mosques, vandalizing Muslim-owned shops, and attempting to break into the homes of Muslim families. When Muslims retaliated, often in self-defense, they were arrested and their homes were demolished in a clear case of revenge politics, all while the Hindu extremist perpetrators walked free. These demolitions have now become a tool to crush dissent in India, and the bulldozer has become the new symbol of the Hindu nationalist movement. In Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, and the Indian capital of New Delhi, Muslims have been the target of discriminatory demolition drives, forced to watch as their homes and shops are bulldozed in retaliation for protesting against the BJP. The most recent case of these revenge demolitions occurred in Uttar Pradesh, when just weeks ago, the home of prominent Muslim activist Afreen Fatima was demolished without notice. Afreen had been clear that her family's home was bulldozed in revenge for her activism, as a warning to other Muslims who also expressed dissent. Muslims have been at the forefront of this unceasing assault, but Christians have not been far behind. Laws severely restricting religious conversions have been implemented in a number of Indian states. While BJP politicians claim that these laws are meant to prevent forced conversions, the reality is these laws provide Hindu extremist mob with impunity as they attack Christian faith leaders, churches, congregations, private worship meetings, and Christian schools under the often false claims that these Christians were attempting to make false conversions. To make matters worse, Christians who are physically attacked and have their properties destroyed rarely receive protection from law enforcement. In fact, victims of mob violence are often arrested under charges of forced conversions while their attackers walk free. At the government level, these attacks are almost never condemned. It's long past time for the cycle of hatred and violence to end. It's long past time for the Biden administration to heed the recommendations made by USCIRF for 3 consecutive years and immediately denounce the crimes and to put India on the CPC list. If not, we could very well be staring down the barrel of yet another genocide. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maenza, for your insightful remarks. Before we request Ambassador Hussain to offer some of his remarks, may I please request Ambassador Islam Siddiqui, who is a veteran of the US government. He served in the Department of Agriculture during the Clinton administration. He was in the White House in the US as in the office of the US Trade Representative with the Obama administration, and he's currently the founder president of American Muslim Institution, a very important civil society organization. So if you can take just about 2 to 3 minutes, and then we will have the request ambassadors.
Thank you, Ajit, and thank you, everyone, Ambassador Rashad, Hussain, and the distinguished panel. It's a difficult act to follow, Nadine. I think you have summarized the situation so well. Let me just get to the point. Number one, I'm here to say what I'm about to say is it's not against India or the Hindu religion. It is against the policies, wrong-headed policies of the Modi government and the BJP government was happening, number one. Number two, I have the pleasure working with the Indian officials at the sub-cabinet level in my career, in both in the Clinton administration and Obama administration, in terms of negotiating trade agreements with India. It was a tough task. I think we have made some openings for both, which are beneficial both to India as well as the US. But I have to tell you, in terms of trade relationship, is dealing with between two sovereign nations, and that's fine. But what has happened in the last 75 years, it was a thriving democracy. India was known for 3 things, which was the first one was the Taj Mahal, second was Mahatma Gandhi, and third was the boisterous democracy, a secular populist democracy in India. It has been hijacked by the Modi government and the BJP extremists who are trying to change India from a democratic secular nation into a theocracy. I think the world should watch it. It is one of the biggest crises. If it's not stopped in the next few years before 2024, when the next election will be for India's central government, I think it's a crisis which is happening. I think Dr. Stanton will address that thing later on. But I have to tell you what's happening in my view. The early warning system which are coming, I think everyone knows it. We should pay attention what the US government should do. In order to counter China, India is being quoted by the US policymakers, which is good. I think we should do that. But I think we need India as a democracy. But if India government is not going to pay attention to the values we uphold in terms of justice, equality, and freedom of religion and human rights, then what good is this alliance which we are paying for? India is not behaving, they still are with Russia and China as part of the BRICS group. They're also buying oil from Russia, defying US and European Union sanctions because of Ukraine. India has yet to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. For the record, I think you should know that. So all things I'm saying is one thing. I think the reluctance on the part of the Biden administration to name India as CPC is of deep concern to a lot of us in this room, and I'll tell you why. I think this should be used as a tool to let India know that these are the values we uphold and expect from our strategic allies, and they must put India on the CPC list. India has nowhere to go. Are they going to go back to China or Russia? They already are with them. They're part of BRIC. They're doing trade with both the countries. Both of those countries are actually one of the top few importers and exporters of India. So only thing is will happen, India will, in the first few weeks, will condemn the action of the US government. But you know what? They're going to come around. And we're not talking about putting sanctions in India. CPC designation, in my view, and I've been in US government in 2 administrations, is to let our friends know, look, we are watching you. And I have to tell this message to Ambassador Rashad Hussain. I think Secretary Blinken should stop talking about the democracy and secular democracy and all this. That was in the past. I think the Modi government's actions clearly indicate they go out to uphold those values. So what I'm trying to say is let's put them on CPC list. If they turn around from the direction they're going, we should not put sanctions. If they do not listen, let's put the sanctions. Number 2, I think we should insist on, if India's government say, look, all the evidence with Nadine and our excellent team at USCIRF has put, let our observers go. Human rights organizations should be allowed to go as observers. And maybe USCIRF was wrong. Prove us they were wrong. But I don't think they're wrong. So I think this should be the test for India. We are going to demand you either put them on the CP list, then they will allow to either to send observers to Kashmir, Assam, Uttar Pradesh, where all these crimes against humanities are happening, and let's test them out. But I don't think India is going anywhere. They have nowhere to go. And I think this fear in the State Department, policymakers, that India is going to move to another, there's no other block to go to. That's what that's about. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Islam. Thank you for your remarks. Without spending any more time, I would like to invite US Ambassador for International Religious Freedom, the Honorable Rashad Hussain. Please come and offer your remarks, sir. We are all very grateful to you that you're here with us.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you all, and I greatly appreciate the work of the Indo-American Muslim Council. Rashid and Ajit, panelists today. Nadine has been so incredible working with you. USCIRF has been an incredible partner. Islam Siddiqui, we've known each other for so long, and I appreciate all the work and research that you're doing. You all know that my family is from India. India is a country that I love. The world's largest democracy is a country where, just like with our own country, we want to make sure every day, it's so important to me that we live up to our values as a democracy so that we can reach our potential. And that can only happen when we have the participation, the full participation, equal participation of all people. So just like I push my own country, in many ways, India is my country as well. My parents are there. My father came to the United States from India in 1969. This country gave him everything, but he loves India and follows what's happening every day. And my parents, we have conversations about that, as do so many people like you who reach out to us and are looking at what's going on in India and love the country and want to see it live up to its values. You may have seen that just in the past few weeks, we issued our report on international religious freedom. So as a part of that report, there's 34 pages on India, and we go through the situation that we're concerned about, including a number of the religious communities in India. Of course, we've spoken about the Muslim community, but I was just meeting with Peter and leaders from the Christian community. We're concerned about the Sikh community. I was meeting with leaders from the Sikh community just yesterday. the Dalit community, the indigenous communities. And in order for any society to live up to its potential, we have to secure the rights of all people. We have a situation now where the Holocaust Museum in the United States has an early warning project. As part of that early warning project, they've designated India as the #2 country in the world at risk of mass killings. And when you do that, you look at some of the research, and we see, of course, the research from Nadine and Greg and others, you'll see that India, of course, now has a citizenship law that's on the books. We've had open calls for genocide in India. We've had attacks on churches. We've had demolitions of homes. We've had, it was mentioned earlier today, that the ban on hijab. We've got rhetoric that's openly being used that's dehumanizing toward people. It's so much to the extent that one minister referred to Muslims as termites. So when you have these ingredients, it's important that we take note and we work to address the challenges that we face. And we do so in dealing directly with the Indian government in our conversations. You heard Secretary Blinken's public statement as well as my statements that we had as a part of our rollout of our IRF report just a few weeks ago about attacks on places and people of worship and our concerns about all religious communities in India. So it's important that we work together and we fight for the rights of all people. If all people, if there's anyone who's attacked, there was an attack against a Hindu that's despicable yesterday in India, we condemn that as well. But our job is to protect the religious freedom of all people everywhere in the world. And, some people ask me this question, since I've come to this job, I've heard this question a number of times, I'll address it later today as well, which is, who are you as an ambassador for international religious freedom, or who are you as the United States to make these assessments about other countries in the world? And the answer to that, I think, is fairly persuasive coming from the United States. First of all, we're a country that was founded on religious freedom. Many of our founders were fleeing religious persecution themselves. So much that the First Amendment in our Constitution protects the freedom of religion. But we're also a country of immigrants, which is a very unique thing in the world. It means that we're a country that's comprised of people that come here from every corner of the planet. And when they come here, they demand of their elected officials, and they demand their government that we not only stand up to our values here in the United States, but we stand up for those values all over the world. So when people ask us, who are you? The answer to that in part is that we are a country made up of representatives of the rest of the world. So it's our responsibility to do everything that we can to speak up, not just in India, but in every country of the world. And that's what we intend to do at our Office of International Religious Freedom, in partnership with all of you, in partnership with USCIRF and the other colleagues here, and in partnership with my predecessors from both sides of the aisle. Ambassador Saperstein is here, Ambassador Brownback, who we've been working with as well, and my other predecessors. This is a nonpartisan project, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you so much.
So much. You just heard very powerful remarks from U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, Rashad Hussain. Please give him a big hand one more time. Thank you. I know you have a very busy schedule today, but if you could stay on for another 5-10 minutes. We have some very important speakers. We have speakers from the Hindu community also lined up. We have speakers from the Indian Christian community. And we have, of course, Rashid Ahmed, who you mentioned earlier. May I also request Ambassador Saperstein to please come forward and sit here with us in the front. Please, at least come here.
I'm here to listen and learn.
Thank you, sir, for coming and joining us here. Without spending any more time, we are at the halfway mark. I would like to ask Dr. Gregory Stanton to come here and offer his remarks. Dr. Stanton needs no introduction. He has Genocide Watch, the organization that he founded, has issued 2 alerts about Muslims in Assam and Muslims in Kashmir facing genocide. And of course, his 10 stages of genocide is globally recognized and is widely cited. He's also the founder and head of the Alliance Against Genocide, which has more than 100 countries. So therefore, Dr. Stanton, please come in.
Thank you very much, Ajit. I told my wife before I came here that it was the first time I put on a suit for 2 years. Now, if I can be as well dressed as his son, now that would be another. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak here. I want to speak to you about more, actually, than India. I have entitled my speech, "The New Nazism." When Adolf Hitler's Nazi regime, Japan's Hirohito, and the Stalinist Soviet Union were defeated, many hoped that Nazism and communism were vanquished. But today, Nazi and communist regimes again rule half the people of the world. Nazism and its communist variant are not opposites. They're twin brothers. The so-called left-right spectrum is a systematically misleading expression. The political spectrum is actually a circle, with one axis being openness to change, the other axis being tolerance for liberty. Nazis and communists and religious zealots have no tolerance for liberty. They are enemies of liberty. They would lock societies into the chains of tyranny. We are here today to declare that we will oppose all tyrants. We will fight everywhere for freedom of religion, because that freedom is the freedom for the human soul. China commits genocide against Tibetans and Uyghurs with impunity. It has built a high-tech totalitarian world with cameras, artificial intelligence, and facial recognition that George Orwell could only imagine. Russia's Putin is destroying entire Ukrainian cities and murders and forcibly displaces their people in a new form of genocide, urbicide, the destruction of urban areas, the intentional destruction of cities. And the intentional destruction of a city is the intentional destruction of part of a national group. It is genocide. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates destroy Yemeni cities with American smart bombs and finance an intolerant Islam while controlling Islam's holiest places. Iran sponsors terrorists around the world while it declares its intent to destroy Israel. And India's Modi and his BJP exclude Muslims from their program of Hindutva, a conspiracy to convert India into a Hindu state. And here in America, we can't point a finger. Our own president, Donald Trump, attempted a coup d'etat that would have destroyed American democracy. The evidence is now being portrayed on television. He preaches racism, hatred, and fear of Muslims, and division of Americans into patriots and traitors. His narcissistic personality disorder has trapped much of the Republican Party into a cult of personality blinded by his lies. This is Nazism. Make no mistake about it. The leaders of these movements are Nazis. They're racists, dedicated to the triumph of their own race or religion. Chinese, Russian, Sunni, Shia, Hindu, white. They are nationalists who would deny basic human rights to anyone not in their race, their religion, or their nation. This combination of racism, bigotry, and nationalism is at the heart of Nazism. It is the ammonium nitrate mixed with fuel oil that, when ignited by hatred, explodes into war and genocide. Well, we're here today to declare that we will oppose all tyranny, because freedom is the freedom of the human soul. person is the stuff of the stars. Each of us was created by the force that created the universe. Love is God's force, personally expressed. Justice is God's force, socially expressed. A lady who I met during the Ukrainian independence movement back in 1990, a little babushka about 4 feet 10, was at an Orthodox church in Kyiv as I was there. I was legal advisor for the Ukrainian independence movement. And she pulled me down by my lapels like this. She pulled me down to the level of her eyes. And she said, "Viva Vin." I didn't understand her at first. So she pulled me down again. She said, "We will win. We will win. Because it is God's work." Thank you.
Please come here and offer our newspaper to that. We are just releasing India Genocide News with the inaugural issue and releasing it and handed copies to Ambassador Hussain and former USCIRF Chair Nadine Maenza and the distinguished panelists here. If you can, sir, just hold it out for the picture. It's not, just take a picture. Thank you. Next up, I would like to quickly invite Leah Chakrabarti, Policy Director for Human Rights. Yeah, if you can conclude in the next 2 to 3 minutes, just a brief remarks. Thank you. Because we have very little time. Then we have John Prabhudas and Sister Hannah Zubair. So please come, and I don't want to spend any more time.
Hello. So I'll just have quick remarks. So I represent Hindus for Human Rights, one of the only Hindu organizations speaking on religious violence in India. We're a diaspora group, and part of our responsibility is to be a diaspora voice to support the work that Indians are putting their lives at risk to do. So Hindus for Human Rights, we resoundingly denounce Hindu thought. We don't believe that it supports we don't believe that Hindu thought is a Hindu, or it encompasses the Hinduism that we believe in. And so I will say that one of the things that we would hope for everyone to do, for other Hindu Americans to do, is to join us to stand against authoritarian violence and to support the fight for justice in India. So, thank you.
Thank you, investors, and for taking time out to join us. I would like to invite Rashad Ahmed, he's of Indian American Muslim Council. Mr. Ahmed is the founder, one of the co-founders of Indian American Muslim Council 20 years ago. He has been a leading light of the Indian American Muslim community for more than 2 decades, actually. He has been widely involved with the wider American Muslim community also. He has been an important figure across the community for shining a spotlight on the Indian government. As most of you know, that Narendra Modi was denied a visa for 9 years by the US administration. Brother Rashid played a very significant role in denying that, in persuading the US government to deny that visa to Mr. Modi. So thank you, Rashid. Please come.
I know we have very limited time. I just want to make a couple of quick remarks. When Freedom House says that India is partly free, and VDEM, the Gothenburg University Institute, says that India is autocratic democracy, they are being polite and being very subtle. India is not a democracy. India is formally known as Socialist Secular Democratic Republic. It is neither socialist now, nor secular, nor democracy, neither republic. It's run by a fringe group, but they are mainstream now. So I think we need to start talking about India in the terms of largest democracy. We need to start seeing India in a quote unquote democracy that Egypt used to have, or still may have it, that Russia has, and all the autocratic governments have it. As long as we perpetuate this narrative, that India is the largest democracy, we are talking about the same old thing. India was founded by many like Mahatma Gandhi, Nehru, Abul Kalam Azad, Ambedkar. Those days are gone. Today, India is ruled by the killers of Gandhi. And they come here wearing Gandhi's mask. An American government and Americans who do not know this think that Modi is representing Mahatma Gandhi's values. It's not true. I think we need to stop this narrative, whether it is private or diplomatic or government. India is not a democracy. That's all I want to say. Please remember this. India is not a democracy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Rashid. You will also be happy to know that not only has Brother Rashid co-founded the American Muslim Council 20 years ago, he has also been a leading and guiding spirit for the founding of the International Council of Indian Muslims, an organization that was recently created with global membership all across Europe, Australia, Canada, North America, everywhere. So thank you. Let's give him a big hand again for his service. We have now 2 more speakers, and then we will have time for everybody to meet with our distinguished panelists, take pictures if you want. I would like to invite the next 2 speakers are John Prabhudas of Federation of Indian American Christians in North America, and then Sister Hina Zubairi of Justice for All. So we'll go with John and Sister Hina. We will have lots of time to bring up the concluding remarks for the India Working Group, of which you are a very esteemed member. John is co-chair of the India Working Group of the IRF Roundtable. And so over to you, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajit. The one thing that I would like to say that Indian American Christian organizations here, we represent about 1 million Indian American Christians across the United States. But in India, officially, yes, about 27 million to 30 million Indian Christians. But those who follow Christian faith in one form or the other, who don't call themselves as Christians, is over 100 million people all across the country, whether, there are concentrations of Indian Christians in several parts, but then in every single state, you will see churches and congregations. So if the Indian Muslims are 200 plus million, Indian Christians are about 100 million. Between us, we have about 300 million plus. Now, I'm often asked, you are a Christian organization, why are you working with Muslim organizations? I'm sure Peter doesn't ask me that question, but others do.
Oh, I ask you all.
A lot of others ask me that question. You have to be, why is it? Because you look at Africa, look at the Middle East, the persecution comes from the Muslim community. The Christians are, the receiving end. Why are you so adamant about speaking for Muslims? I had Hindu nationalist leaders come and tell me very simply, please don't talk about the Muslims, we'll take care of you. I say, okay, yeah, that's a great idea, because what the church in America needs to understand is that the Christians, the Muslims, the Sikhs are all in the same boat as far as India is concerned. One of them sings, everybody sings. Now, isn't it Christ asked us to care for the persecuted and care for the vulnerable among us? He didn't say that only take care of only the Jewish people or only the Christian people, right? So everybody, in that sense, yes, theologically we have a responsibility to speak for those who are persecuted more than we have been. But also we need to understand that if the nationalist forces are able to neutralize 200 million people, they will. Imagine how easy would that be to neutralize 100 million, half of that population. Because there will be no one defending the churches, Indian church. Indian churches, again, is not a British invention. Indian church has been in India for, we are celebrating next week, we are celebrating the 1950th anniversary of Apostle Thomas, who was murdered in Chennai, India. The church has been in India for as long as the church has been from the time of apostles. So if we don't want to see what happened to the church in Central Asia, in Asia Minor, we need to bind together and start talking about it. I think with that remarks, I would conclude since we are running short of time. I have been asked, is there going to be a question and answer session, because many of them are watching us on the online. Are we going to have a question Q&A?
Yes,
okay.
After.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
She's done. So next up is Sister Hina Zuberi. Sister Hina Zuberi is Director of the DC Operations for Justice for All. And this is an organization that is also several decades old. They have done remarkable work pursuing advocacy for the Uyghurs, for the Kashmiri cause, for the Burma cause. And now they're working very closely as part of the India Working Group on the issue of India. So please.
Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. And this my last visit to visit my father, he told me a story about my grandmother. On the Prophet's birthday, she would make kheer and distribute it to all her neighbors, Hindus and Muslims. And he was reminiscing about the India that he grew up in and mourning the India that doesn't exist anymore. So just wanted to just say that this cause is personal to many of us. We have family, friends, relatives back in India. Justice for All's work on genocide tracking began almost 30 years ago with Bosnia. And we have experienced recognizing genocide from the Central African Republic to the Uyghurs in China, to the Rohingya in Burma. And India, we're seeing, is much more open about it. We're seeing from our work and our history on working on genocide, how media is being used in India like it was used in Bosnia. How Facebook is being used in India like it was used in the Rohingya genocide. How there are detention camps, much like the Uyghur detention camps in China. The genocidal language, the dehumanizing language that is being used, like Rwanda. I believe it is very important, as many of the speakers have mentioned, that we recognize the force behind everything that is occurring and what you have heard today. It is important to name the ideology. This is the Hindutva ideology, and to name the Hindutva organizations that are working to perpetuate this genocide. The RSS, it's like the Ku Klux Klan, but worse, in that it has a paramilitary force that works hand in glove with the ruling party in India. Let that sink in. Hindutva groups are frankly unlike anything we've seen in the past. They operate at the political level, like the BJP, much like the Nazi Party or the Tea Party. At the social level, like the VHP, works like the Ku Klux Klan. And on a religious and paramilitary level, RSS shocks us or centers like the Proud Boys and the Serb Volunteer Guards, as well as with extremist groups enforcing their ideas through mob violence, through the Bajrang Dal. It's important to name them as extremist organizations, and I hope the United States government will be able to do this. We heard a lot about the calls to genocide in December. I want to emphasized this was the largest religious body of Hindus, and we again reiterate, we do not believe Hindutva is Hinduism, that issued this call for genocide at the Hindu Dharam Summit. A clear plan was made out: collect and train in weapons, recruit suicide bombers, and kill 2 million to drive away the rest in fear, much like Burma. Where are these 250 million people going to go? Bangladesh? To Pakistan? Afghanistan? What is going to happen to South Asia? This is much bigger than even just India. And this is why Professor Stanton has issued 2 genocide alerts for India. And the Holocaust Museum has early warning project, is recognizing that India is already going through mass killings. Now, the work is done in a very hidden way. There's almost no case where there is open admission of the government's complicity. The BJP, as well as its parent RSS, remain hidden behind the cover while influencing their followers. The supremacy of the Hindu religion and culture, and the narrative that blames Muslims as foreigners, and the problems that are faced by and responsible for the problems faced by Hindus. Now, one thing that we as the India Working Group keep hearing from the US government is that we need to trust the judiciary. I wanted to point out just 2 things about court complicity before I end. Laws are applied differently for Muslims and Hindus. Courts are now expressing opinions beyond the case being heard and making the environment for future judgments. I want to bring up Tista's case. She is a human rights defender who's worked on bringing justice for Muslim victims of the 2002 pogroms against Muslims in Gujarat. She was a co-petitioner in the case of Zakia Jafri and had petitioned the Supreme Court on the death of Zakia Jafri's husband in Gujarat. She has been arrested soon after and was abused in police custody. The message is, the court said, it called for the arrest of anyone involved, or if anyone did a similar case like Tista did in the future. The message is, Hindus who help Muslims will not be spared. The second case in point, just day before yesterday, Mohammed Zubair, co-founder of the fact-checking website Alt News, highly respected, arrested, Twitter account blocked, and we all fear for his life in incarceration. His partner, Hindu fact-checker, says that Zubair was targeted because he was Muslim. Now, what does this mean for the United States? And this, I'm saying this on behalf of the entire India Working Group. India's inaction and our unwillingness to take even small steps is seen as a weakness. The United States is weak. We treat India in a preferential way, and the unwillingness of our government to follow its own CATSCA sanctions shows that clearly. We cannot make the same mistake that we made in China. Look at where China is right now. If we had taken bold steps to stop China in its track 20 years ago, we would not be facing what we are facing today. The time to stop India in the path of genocide is now. We just simply don't have more time.
With those pointed words, we come to the conclusion of our program. But before we conclude, I had requested former USCIRF chair, Nadine Maenza, to please release our newspaper that we have launched now. But because Ambassador Hussain was leaving earlier, so Brother Rashid Ahmed, if you could come here, and if you could hold up the newspaper along with former chair, USCIRF Nadine Maenza, and well, if you could come here, both of you, and for the, and then everyone, please give us a big hand. This newspaper is going to talk about, this is called India Genocide News. We have started as a monthly newspaper, and this will go out to all members of Congress, to US officials, across the White House, National Security Council, Department of State, and everywhere to civil society. To start with, this is monthly. This includes Muslims, Dalits, Christians, human rights defenders, all the issues. This will be the newspaper of the community, even though it's being brought out by the Indian American Muslim Council. It belongs to all of us. Please feel free to contribute to it with news, with stories, with content, and hopefully, God willing, we will make this compulsory read for our policymakers. Thank you so much. We now literally have 7 minutes to go. So if there are any quick questions for our panel, especially with Ms. Maenza or Ambassador Siddiqui or Dr. Stanton, then quick question. I'll take 2 questions together, and then maybe if let them ask a question, then you can answer at the same time. Yes.
There is no pussyfooting around. We got to speak boldly and clearly as Ambassador Islam Siddiqui spoke. That is what we need. Take action. No more talking.
Thank you. Yes, at the back. Please stand up.
Yes, so I have a question. So I have not heard about the specific sanctions. We see the.
Could you identify yourself also?
I'm sorry. My name is Shabir Musli. I represent Shia International.
All right.
Based in DC. So the question is, why is this government not imposing any sanctions relating to the employment that has been granted, employment status for the Indian citizens who come here? I think that sanction would actually let Modi think about what he's doing currently.
Okay. Any other questions here? Any other questions? Yes, please go ahead.
This question is for Ms. Nadine. So I know that we all know that the USCIRF commission is not allowed to India. So as the new ambassador is in place, what are the steps will be the ambassador will be taken so the USCIRF commission can go to India?
So she represents neither the ambassador nor the USCIRF. But okay, we literally have 5 minutes to go before I make concluding thanks to everybody. So Ms. Maenza, please go ahead. You have a minute, and Islam Siddiqui Saab, you have a minute. Please go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, is it working?
No, why don't you go up?
I'll go here. I know for a lot of you hearing this over and over again, it seems like, as you were saying, it's time for action. But there's still a lot of people in U.S. Congress that don't know. I mean, a lot of this is important. If members of Congress, they respond to their constituents. So people need to be meeting with their members of Congress. They need to be educating the staff. We're all over every 6 months. There's like new staffers on the Hill. So there's still a lot of people that this is a brand new topic for. And so what I say is, get out there and be sharing this information with new people and helping them to understand the gravity of the situation.
So on the sanctions issues, I did address in my brief comments, sanctions should be in reserve. I think first step should be gradually to talk about putting India on the CPC list, country of particular concern. And if they deny access to work, like monitors from human rights organization or USCIRF, or fail to prove those crimes against humanity are not happening against minorities, both Christians and Muslims and Dalits, then I think we should talk about this. But as a trading partner in one of the largest country, the most populous country in the world, China, I think there are some reservations on the part of the policymakers. I don't deny it. I have been in government. I understand what the hesitations are, especially vis-a-vis China. But what I'm trying to say is they should be told, look, if you fail to do it, sanctions will be there. And there we need to work on the Hill with members of Congress, because President needs to hear from the members of Congress, both parties, Democratic, Republican, look, this is what's happening. So our task is to educate not only the administration, but also members of Congress. One thing I have to say on this front, I think in the last day and a half I've been attending this conference, all the other human rights violators and what I call the bad actors have been mentioned, but India's name is missing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our to actually talk to our faith community leaders, and I think this is the work ahead. So next year at the summit, there should be India's name should be front and clear. Okay,
thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much. This brings us to the conclusion of the program. I'm going to read out very quickly one more time the members of the India Working Group. Ladies and gentlemen, the India Working Group is an esteemed group of civil rights community, religious freedom community belonging to the International Religious Freedom Roundtable, which in itself is more than a decade old. The organizations here are Association of Indian Muslims of America, International Society for Peace and Justice, Sunshine Ministries, Catholic Bishops, Center for Pluralism, Justice for All, Federation of Indian American Christians of North America, New York State Council of Churches, Jubilee Campaign, Hindus for Human Rights, Indian American Muslim Council. Thank you so much for being here. We would like to invite all of you, if you want pictures with the esteemed panelists here, please come up here. Just one last point, as Pastor Islam Siddiqui mentioned, there's still time. We have the summit until tomorrow. Please go around and please meet with the leaders of the faith community at the summit, and please tell them to bring up the issue of India. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.